Farage is taking too much of the burden. He needs to appoint more front bench spokespeople. He needs to appoint somebody in charge of candidates and a chief of staff, and he needs to change his style. Go back, as Tim says, to the old affable Farage, whereas I've said it's actually Farage. After the way he responded in Clacton, he's turned from being the affable to, as Northerners might say, the laughable. Beaten by Count Binface, but. He reacted to that Farage, that Clacton result, which after all was a resounding victory in the most astonishing manner. And it's all very aggressive these days.
Well, Michael,
and sort of complaining all the time. He needs to be more natural and down to earth and back to the old friendly, joking Farage.
Now, the political commentator Tim Montgomerie's posted on X after being suspended from Reform UK.
I have no regrets over what I've said or done, and I'd like to think that this appeal process will be genuine, and I will certainly be making the case that my contribution, my constructive criticism, is not only what I said I would characterise my membership, but I think is a healthy part of any political party.
Well, Tim Montgomerie, you'll remember, he set up the Conservative Home website before defecting to Reform, but in recent days he has been openly critical of the approach taken by Nigel Farage and his team. He's bemoaned what he describes as Farage's slip away from what he calls his usual affable persona. And now, in an interview with the Spectator podcast, Tim Montgomerie has criticised the Home Affairs spokesman Zia Yusuf for not being a team player. Watching all of this with perhaps a bit of a professional eye, but Michael Crick, journalist, biographer, you've seen this all before. You've warned about this before. In fact, you predicted this very moment back in 2026, didn't you?
Well, it was actually on Times Radio on the Aisha Hazarika's show before Christmas, and we were doing predictions for 2026 at the end of the show, and Tim was a member of the panel, and I mischievously said my prediction for 2026 is that Tim would not be a member of Reform at the end of the year, and so it seems it's happened. Although technically he's only suspended, and it's not clear, how he overcomes, how long that suspension's for, whether it's forever, whether he can appeal against it. It's all a bit of a mess, and I suspect he won't be a member by the end of the year. But I mean, Tim, frankly, is a bit too honest for Reform. He's the sort of guy who I think probably finds it very difficult indeed to tell a lie. And he's been very blunt about the problems that Reform faces right now. And his advice, in my view, I'm not a Reform supporter, but it seems to me that the advice he's given Farage and his colleagues is very sensible. I mean, Farage is taking too much of the burden. He needs to appoint more front bench spokespeople. He needs to appoint somebody in charge of candidates and a chief of staff, and he needs to change his style. Go back, as Tim says, to the old affable Farage, whereas I've said it's actually Farage. After the way he responded in Clacton, he's turned from being the affable to, as Northerners might say, the laughable. Beaten by Count Binface, but. He reacted to that Farage, that Clacton result, which after all was a resounding victory in the most astonishing manner. And it's all very aggressive these days.
Well, Michael,
and sort of complaining all the time. He needs to be more natural and down to earth and back to the old friendly, joking Farage.
All right, well, look, let's... Tim Montgomerie also posted on X. This is another comment that he made. Let's just have a listen.
I take some comfort from the fact that Nigel Farage did not know about my suspension, and he, more than anyone, knows all the stuff I've done behind the scenes to help Reform.
What do you think about that?
Well, it surprised me when I heard that, because I assumed that it was Farage who'd purged him. I mean, Farage has purged so many people. He makes Joseph Stalin look like a bit of an amateur. But apparently it wasn't Farage. And then the question is, who was it? Well, Zia Yusuf seems to be the main suspect. And in which case one would think, well, can't Farage then reinstate Tim? Because Tim actually warned Farage he says he warned Farage when he defected from the Conservatives to Reform a couple of years ago that he was going to be a pain in the backside. I don't think he used the word backside, but a stronger word than that, and that he would make criticisms and give advice both internally and externally that Farage might not initially like to hear. And it seems to me that a lot of what Tim says is very, very sensible.
Okay.
I mean, he's an astute observer of politics. He's been around a long time, and he genuinely wants Reform to win. But if leaders who don't take advice, who are frightened of advice, who react badly to advice, and not very strong leaders, actually, ultimately, and not very successful, you've got to be able to take it internally and externally, and you've got to be able to do so with a smile.
Michael Crick, journalist, biographer, acute observer of Reform, talking about a fellow acute observer. Thanks so much for talking to us. Look, there's a row going on, or developing at least, inside the Reform Party. What's been happening?
Quite a lot of drama going on in the Reform Party. So yesterday, Tim Montgomerie, who is familiar to many listeners of this station as well, he came on a podcast, a Spectator podcast, and gave a very long and considered interview, mostly about the party's Home Affairs spokesman, Zia Yusuf. Quite critical, specifically critical of how Zia Yusuf handles other people, other politicians within Reform. And Tim Montgomerie talked about his own personal experience there, that Zia Yusuf is not currently on speaking terms with him and has not been. And he claimed that that is also the case for several people within Reform, where Yusuf is, he said, just cutting people off and not speaking to them. And the argument is obviously that politics should be a team sport, particularly within your own party. And that was, he criticised that and said that is one of the things that holding Reform back. Well, lo and behold, Tim Montgomerie has been suspended from the party now. I understand the suspension happened before this interview was broadcast and is generally about his public comments about the party. But he is obviously not, he doesn't hold a shadow brief. He is a member, he has been a supporter, and he actually has made the point that when he joined from the Conservatives, of which he was a lifelong member until then, and quite a key player, he told Nigel Farage that he would be a critical friend. He would point out things when they needed to be pointed out. And he says that Farage was on board with this. But obviously the wind has slightly changed.
Well, thanks very much for joining us, Anna. Anna Mihailova there, the political editor for Times Radio.